Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 374. I was white here, kicked off with d4. My opponent played e6, so this allows a number of different replies. I chose to play e4 and we get into a French defense. You can also go c4 to try and keep it in queen's pawn opening lines, or knight f3. A lot of reasonable ways to play here, but just putting two pawns in the center when you can is often a good rule of thumb. d5, so now we have a French defense, knight c3, and knight f6, the classical French, rather than the win-hour with the bishop pin. Now I normally play the Steinitz variation with the immediate pawn push followed up by f4, but I wanted to try something different this time. So this is the mainline classical French. You bring the bishop out here to pin the knight. Black unpins, and then you push the pawn forward. And the idea is you push these knights away and you trade off the dark squared bishop, which is, in this pawn structure, that's the good bishop. This bishop is locked in behind the pawns, and it'll take black a while to develop. But it turns out that black gets enough counterplay with the counterattack on the center. So even though this is a kind of a main way of playing against the French, I've always had a little bit of trouble getting an edge, but I just wanted to try it for variety. So let's see how it goes. f4 is the main move, shoring up the center, castles, and knight f3. Just developing normally, and c4, typical counterattacking move by the black player in the French defense going after the center. And now I play the funny move. Yeah, so queen to d2 is the main move here. Let's take a look at that first. If I had played queen to d2, then it might go knight c6. And what's the idea of queen d2? Am I going to castle queenside? Yeah, castling queenside is an option now, or d takes c5. Let's take a look at this variation. Just a couple more steps. D takes c5, queen or knight takes c5, and then castles. Yeah. Okay, so I really wasn't aware of that line. Like I said, I don't usually play this. I usually play the Steinitz variation, and that's what happens. So I was improvising, and I tried this move knight b5. This looked kind of attractive because there's this dark square here. It's controlled by the pawn, where I can sink a knight if it gets chased away. And we're just out of the opening book here. You can see the Chess Engine rates this position as about even, but it was about even before the move, so I haven't made a horrible blunder here or anything. So my opponent continues with knight c6, going after these pawns. I play c3, a very typical move, shoring up the center. And I'm still planning to come to the d6 square if the knight gets kicked. But black doesn't bother to kick the knight. He leaves it there, plays c takes d4. And then I decide, well, maybe I should take back with the knight. The Chess Engine slightly prefers taking with the pawn, but it's very comparable. And you could take with either knight. But I thought, well, I'll retreat this knight away from this post, not commit to going to the d6 square, where in the long run it might get traded off and leave a weak pawn there, and just play this position. So it's about an even position still. f6, very typical move, undermining the center, and a lot of times you want to take. If you just sit here, black has two options. He can take the pawn, and in this case just win a pawn, so I'd have to figure out how to defend it if I didn't take. Or he can sometimes just push forward and lock up the center, which maybe you want and maybe you don't, depending on the position, but it helps defend his king side. To lock up the center makes it a little more difficult for me to break through. So taking is often the response to the f6 move in the French. You give black an extra pawn in the center, but it is backwards, and maybe you can try and keep it backwards. So he took with the queen. He could have also taken with the pawn. Knight, queen, or pawn. Yeah, they're all given as viable moves. The queen is a decent way to play this, trying to get some pressure here on the f-file. Now I start to look at this position. I'm thinking maybe I was a little too casual in my play up to this point, because I haven't castled. My opponent has. He's got all of his pieces developed except for his problem bishop and the rooks, which this is still a serious issue for black, but white has problems here too. Namely, I haven't castled. So anyway, g3 to defend this pawn, and he goes knight to c5. Okay, yeah, bringing his knight forward and freeing a square for his bishop. But he had something better here, huh? Pushing on with e5 immediately. Yeah, this is a good move. So my opponent missed this, and I missed it too. Let's see. Yeah, let's put the variation on the board. This attacks my knight, and if I take, there's this kind of a pin operating here. That's defended though. What would happen if I took? Let's see this in detail. Knight D takes E5. Knight D takes E5. Okay, takes the pawn back, putting more pressure on my knight. I defend the knight. And then knight takes D4. C takes D4. Oh yeah, this is under defended. Okay, yeah, so I'm losing a piece here. What's the other option after knight takes E4? Can't I just move this knight away? I guess the problem with moving the knight away is it exposes the F7 square. So if I just retreated the knight here, the F2 square, queen to F2 mate. Okay, so this is a dangerous position for white, and he can exploit it. Black can exploit that by playing the move E5 here. So he missed that chance. He played knight C5. He'd probably planned this move out in advance, but it just goes to show you should always stop and consider your options. So now I have a comfortable edge after this. It's funny, just that one move. If I were to develop bishop D3, maybe is the best way, but bishop E2 still is okay. Bishop D7, finally get to castle, and I've got some maybe some advantage because of this hole in the backwards E pawn. Maybe that's where my advantage consists. Black has more pawns in the center, well, I have the better bishop. I have the better bishop, and I have this hole to play against. So I guess that's my advantage in this position. But he could have taken that all away by an appropriately timed E4 move. E5, rather. Okay, so he plays knight to E4. Interesting move, just blocking my view of the E5 square. I take on C6. The engine approves of that. Bishop takes. And then knight to E5, sinking this knight into what I thought was a good square. Okay, rook A to C8. So far, so good. Bishop to D3. Getting a little pressure on this knight, which I thought was maybe a little overextended here. The knight just goes back to C5, though. I drop the bishop back to C2. And bishop to B5. So a little bit of maneuvering here. I thought this was still okay. I played rook to F2, and the engine prefers rook E1. That might be a little more precise. I just have to move the rook away from the bishop. And I thought maybe on the second rank it could do something useful. But also on the E file, that's a good square for it as well, looking at the E6 pawn. Okay, so queen to H6 was played. And I went queen to G4, trying to activate my queen and maybe having some ideas of attacking on the king side. Also threatening over here, if I can chase the knight away, I can maybe grab on E6. Well, his queen's defending it too, so not so simple. He plays king H8, and I go rook to E1. Okay, engine approved. So I guess I'm building up quite an advantage here. Somehow it slips away from me after a little bit. Knight back to F3. Maybe I'm not finding the best moves here. Rook to D2, rook to E3, maybe some more rook maneuvers or an H-pawn push. It's a computer suggestion. So I tried some knight maneuvers here. I was trying to, well, first of all, it unblocks the view of the rook on this pawn, but it's still well defended. But I was thinking, well, maybe a knight maneuver here, or again, kicking his knight away. But whenever I play a move like B4, kicking his knight away, it exposes a weakness on C3 as well. So have to be careful with that. Bishop to D3. And I could just take that, and it's an exchange, I guess, that favors me. Bishop takes D3, knight takes D3, and rook takes E6. Ah, so here's my chance to grab the pawn. I thought bishop takes, knight takes, and he's forking my two knights here. I mean, my two rooks. So why does this work? It works because I get a tempo on the queen. Oh, okay. So if he grabs here, this can't be all that good. Can't I just take his queen here? Oh no, my queen's under attack, sorry. I have to take the knight back. And then g6, protecting his queen. So what's this? I have a queen. Well, he did win the exchange. So in a way I was right, but I grabbed a center pawn. Interesting. So he wins the exchange, but I get a center pawn. So I'm a pawn up and a knight. So I guess this is an example of a good exchange sacrifice. I really didn't see that. I saw that I could take, and he would have these two rooks being forked by his knight, but I didn't see rook takes here in that subsequent line. So anyway, I just moved the knight to defend the bishop, and he played rook c to e8, defending his pawn. And now, right here, I guess I can keep the advantage, which I've had for a while now, by playing rook to e5. Yeah, pretty logical move. I don't know why I didn't play that. I was thinking of chasing his bishop away. I guess I didn't like that piece there. So I played rook d1, and then after this exchange, we're once again in the territory of where it's about even. And it's just going to take me a few more moves to get my pieces coordinated to try and bring pressure back on the e-pawn. I thought I was getting something good going there. Interesting. So knight back to e4. I guess this is the problem. He can continue to block my view of the e-pawn. Rook to e1. Rook to f6, defending from the side. Knight to f3. I guess I had a chance to play c4 there, maybe to undermine his knight. And he starts going after my queen, and we get this exchange, and in a few moves we exchange down into an endgame. And this really should be a draw, although well, the engine gives right here. The engine gives a very slight edge to black, but I have to play carefully. I had sort of seen ahead this far, and I was thinking, if I could get my king to this square, this would actually be a winning endgame for me. But the problem is I'm never getting there. It's his move to start with, but even if it wasn't his move, if I were to get in my king up here, he could still play his king here and get those pawns forward. So and then this pawn becomes a very dangerous pass pawn. So I have to play very carefully here. He plays e5 immediately. A good plan to keep my king out so I can't blockade these pawns. And now let's see, what are the moves here that draw? b3, a4, g4. Well, let's see, I think king e3 is not losing just yet. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, it's not losing. King g6, I just wanted to find that moment where this turns into a loss. h3, b5, b3. I'm just kind of holding the line here. King to f5, g4 check. Okay, so that's the move here. So I just tried to overpush. I was trying to chase his king away so I could go after these pawns and clear out this square for my king. So so this is just a bad strategy. I just have to kind of hold my ground here. Maybe play a4 if I need to play something, and that would just basically hold everything as it is. I'm controlling this whole fourth rank, and he can't penetrate. And if he ever pushes his pawns forward, they'll just become fixed in position. He won't be able to move them forward after that, because he won't be able to bring his king forward to support them. So this should be a draw, and I just overpush with this move g4 check, and suddenly it's a loss. So he plays this part really well. King g5, c4. This is my idea, to try and create a light square here for my king to move forward to. He takes, and I took back, and he just takes again, and yeah, now I realize, oh, I've made a horrible mistake. I've got this square for my king, but he's got this pawn that runs, so I can't ever actually, doesn't do me any good to go here. He played h6, I went a4, he went to king h4. He's just going after these pawns. I can't leave these pawns behind to go to these two pawns. I can't leave them behind to go and defend my pawn, so it's just a losing endgame. So it all comes back to that one position where I played the pawn forward g4 check. So just remember this, you can't play for a win. There's times when you really have to just accept the position is drawn and not try to play for a win, because you really are just playing for a loss in a position like this. Okay, well, let's set it back. This is how the game ended, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.